Hey, this is Patrick, and I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on how I edit my black and white images. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to open up your file in Photoshop, and I'm going to go ahead and turn all the settings to default. I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to describe everything I'm going to do, so don't worry if this is your first video. So the first thing I notice is that this image is overexposed. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the exposure over here using this slider. And we're in something called Camera Raw, which is how Adobe Photoshop handles RAW files. It's basically just a nice, easy template that has some of the things that are already in Photoshop, but they just put it in this nice, easy template for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the exposure, since I use manual exposure only, and sometimes I get it wrong, but luckily this saves it for me. I'm going to lower it by more than a stop over here. Usually I would mess with the white balance at this point, but since this is black and white, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Then the next part is to lower the saturation down to -100. And you'll notice that if you adjust the white balance at this point, it does change the image quite a bit. But just do it all to eye, and I like it the way it is. But the major part, or the most important part of this process is this black slider over here, which basically boosts all of the darker tones in the image, making the image more contrasty. I like it a lot more than using this contrast tab over here. So basically I increase the blacks tab until it just gets way too contrasty, and I just back it down a little bit. Just whatever looks nice, and that looks good to me. The first step I'm going to do is I'm going to do an unsharp mask, which is filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. And then I'm going to use amount 20, radius 40, and threshold 0. You'll notice that in other Photoshop videos people use different amounts, and basically just play around with it and see which one works best for you. 2040 works best for me. The guy I learned it from uses 2060. It's all personal preference, and that's pretty much the key. You'll notice that I'm not going to mess around with any layers over here. This is a black and white image. I'm not going to do too much to it. In my other videos I do use layers, so if there are any Photoshop gurus, please don't hate on me. Yeah, so the first thing I like to do is, or the thing I like to do is, I like to separate the subject from the background. And I do this through a method I like to call feathered curves. So I'm going to select this guy over here using the selection tool. Let's make a square around him because, in my opinion, he's the main subject of this image. I'm going to go ahead and feather this area, but what does feather do? If I didn't feather the selection and I change the insides, you'll notice that there's a very clear, defined area in which people can see I edited it. That's kind of weird. Edited it. Yeah, there we go. But if I feathered the area and then changed it, notice that the change is a very soft and subtle change, and that's why you feather the area. I use 200, but it's really based on how large your image size is. Just do it so that you get this nice little oval shape. So I'm going to do curves, which is Control M, what I was doing earlier. Or you can go to Image, Adjustments, and then Curves. And basically what curves is this little cool line thing where you can play around with the darkness of the image, the darkness or brightness of the specific tones in the image. And what I mean is, here are the lighter tones in this upper quadrant, and here are the darker tones in this lower left quadrant. And basically, you notice that if I bring this line up in the middle by making an anchor point and dragging it up, notice that all the different tones in the image just get brighter because I'm bringing up the darker tones. Or I can bring them all down. I can do either one. Also, there are cooler things like an S-curve, which is basically making a point down here, making a point up here, bringing the top one up and the bottom one down, and this makes, you can see, the area more contrasty, because basically you're brightening the lighter tones of the image, and you're darkening the darker tones. So I want him to pop out even more from the background, so I want to make him even more contrasty. So I'm going to do an S-curve, but just a very slight one, nothing too much, just something like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and select inverse, which selects everything but this selection, in a sense the background. I'm going to do another curves, Control M, and then I'm going to darken it, just bring this line down a tad bit, so that he pops out even more. So there you have it. This is pretty much the completed image. Other tools that you can use in black and white that are really useful are the dodge and burn tool. Basically, burn darkens the selection and dodge brightens the selection. You can change your brush size over here, and you can change something called hardness. And what hardness is how you'll notice that the brush size is circle. That's how much of a circle your brush will actually be. If your hardness is 0, it's going to be really, really soft. You won't really notice too much of a circle. Let me turn it to 100 so you can see. And you can adjust the exposure, how much it darkens and brightens. So you can see there's a very clearly defined circle right there. If I did a really hard one, and if I did a very, very soft one, you notice that it's barely noticeable at all. So I'm going to go back, and this cool little guy over here is the history window. You can go to window, and then click history, and then it'll show up over here. So if you want, you can basically burn certain things or dodge certain things to bring them out. A lot of times I find burning the street or the foreground has a very, very nice effect. And then you can dodge, I don't know, you could dodge the subject a little bit more. Just a tad bit, if you wanted to. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. If you liked my video, please rate it high. If you have any suggestions for me, please also comment. And, okay. Alright. Thanks. See ya.